Now, I will say, before we get into this video topic, that I could not actually find the source of where this Pierre LeBrun quote comes from. Normally, I like to do my research. I like to look at all the available audio hits, radio segments, TV segments, if there are any, wherein an insider or an analyst goes out there and says something before we repeat it here on the YouTube channel. But in this case, we are not going over to some specific audio hit because I unfortunately could not find it. Instead, we had a whole bunch of social media discourse from different Instagram fan pages and stuff that went out there and said this, and I don't really think that that's too much of a quote-unquote reliable source just because they say, oh, this guy said this. But instead, the reason we're working with that in this video is because we actually had ourselves a tweet made by Marco D'Amico, the guy who writes for Montreal Hockey Now. He is an actual NHL insider, analyst, and reporter who went out there and made a tweet discussing this exact thing. So this isn't really something that I think might be too accurate or maybe even recent, but I did think it was valuable to go out there and acknowledge that this idea is out there. It exists. And so the reason we're making this video is because of Montreal Canadiens forward Josh Anderson and a potential trade idea that the Canadiens apparently rejected in the past regarding this player. Now, Anderson is 28 years old, 6'3", 218, you know the deal. He's a big guy, he's a right-handed guy, he's a sniper type of guy, and he's signed on till 2027, when he is going to be, what is that? He'll be 29 at the end of this season. 2027 is 4 years from now, so 33 years old. He's signed at 5.5 AAV. This season, Josh Anderson, in 47 games played, has 14 goals, 3 assists for 17 total points. He is on pace for a 24-goal season and only 5 assists, which is kind of crazy when you acknowledge just how few assists he's really gotten this season. But aside from that, there's more to Anderson's game than just his lack of playmaking, quote-unquote. We all know that he's a power forward. He's a guy that can streak down the wing with speed, get by a guy or two before sniping it up high. He scores many goals like that. He's just capable of firing the puck at high velocity, and it's been a pretty successful formula for him the past few years. We noted in prior videos that his career high, 2018-19, wherein he got 27 goals and 20 assists for 47 total points. This is kind of what NHL GMs and other people in the league saw Anderson as. The problem was he had injury problems which sustained in the season after, which is why he had gotten traded from Columbus to Montreal in the Max Domi trade, and there was also an RFA element to that conversation as well. But Marc Bergevin, after acquiring Josh Anderson, signed the guy to a pretty nutty deal, which at the time was seen by a pretty big risk that also had the potential for some huge dividends if everything went right and Anderson recovered from his injuries properly. Now, long story short, he's been okay in Montreal. I don't want to say he's been as good as he was in the past. 27 goals, 27 assists in a full season. Obviously, he's not on pace for the same amount of points nor assists, but the goals are kind of similar. Montreal being a bad team this season could definitely play into that, but at the same time, Anderson is a player who, with his age, his contract, and the style that he plays, you'll find a conversation or two here and there asking whether or not it's really worth it having Anderson on the contract that he's at, because $5.5 million, that's quite a lot of money, especially for a guy going until he's 33 years old. Also, the fact that Anderson is really streaky, he's never really consistent with being able to produce goals. He'll have a hot week or two and then go like 2 or 3 weeks without scoring a goal. It's kind of awkward seeing how Anderson's profile has been here in Montreal, but the reason we're making this video is because of what Marco D'Amico said on a Twitter thread earlier last week. This was a post made by Habs on Reddit. On the Twitter, I don't really understand how this works, but the Canadian subreddit apparently has its own Twitter account. It appears that teams are kicking the tires at Josh Anderson leading up to the trade deadline, according to Marco D'Amico. Written in the screenshot of this Twitter post is a write-up by D'Amico on Montreal Hockey Now, saying essentially that teams are going out there and they want Anderson. An NHL executive who chose to remain anonymous said, "You watch games like tonight and he looked like the best player on both teams," said the executive regarding Anderson's play in the night against Toronto. "That kind of ability, especially in tough rivalry games, is exactly what teams want to add at the trade deadline. I'd be very interested to see if someone pays the price. Teams will be calling for sure." Then there is a conversation afterwards saying, okay, it would be a mistake to trade Anderson, who's going to give us 25 goals this year, and for what, a late first-round pick that might not even make it to the NHL? Another reply says he scored 27 one year and never scored 20 again, making 5.5 until he's 33. Who said they would only get a late first for him? He's inconsistent to get that. If you trade him now, it's to a playoff team. It'll be from pick 17 and down. It's a 50-50 that a player in that range turns out to be an NHL player in the first place, and a good NHL player, the chances are even less. And folks, it took us 5 minutes to get to the scoop, but this is where we're at. Marco D'Amico chimes in and gets involved in this conversation. The Canadiens wouldn't trade Anderson for just a first. They've refused an offer in the past, per Pierre LeBrun, that included a first for Anderson. Now, this is why I said I was kind of questioning as to whether or not this is actually like an accurate thing to be talking about, because the way it's phrased here, it doesn't necessarily say, oh, the Canadiens rejected a trade for Anderson this year, or sometime in the past little while they ended up rejecting a trade for Anderson that included a first. It just says in general that this happened. This could be from like a year ago. So I think you could understand why I'm a little bit choked, why I can't actually see the source. I wasn't able to find it. You know, Pierre LeBrun does a lot of audio hits and radio segments over the days, so this specific idea wasn't one that I was able to find, but I wanted to talk about it anyway, because this is so strange that I feel like if you wanted to talk about Josh Anderson and his worth to the team, this is, to me at least, really pushing it. Now, assuming that this Marco D'Amico tweet talking about Anderson and the first-round pick rejected trade is as we think it is, let's just assume sometime in the past little while the Canadiens rejected a trade for Josh Anderson, I wanted to read you a quote from March of 2022, so just under a year ago, published by Habs Chronicle on Twitter, going over Kent Hughes and the Canadiens organization's opinion on Anderson. Pierre LeBrun, this is also a LeBrun thing, says that Kent Hughes doesn't bring up Josh Anderson to other teams in trade talks. He doesn't say he's untouchable, but he's considered part of the core moving forward, and it would take an overpay to get him out of Montreal. This post then says do not trade him, but of course this is from a year ago. I'm not going to go out there and say that the Canadiens absolutely, with, you know, a gun to their head, need to go out there and make a trade involving Josh Anderson. I'm just saying that, man, if you were offered a first-round pick to do it, it is very intriguing to me why the Canadiens would have gone out there and not taken such a move. In my opinion, I don't really feel like Anderson is worth a first-round pick, especially with his age, his contract, his production, his decline, how he plays now versus how he had played in his last good year in Columbus before the injury happened. It's intriguing to me how the Canadiens value this guy so much that they wouldn't even accept a first for him. What exactly is an overpay going to be for Josh Anderson then, if a first-round pick from a playoff team, let's say 22nd overall, is not going to get it done? Oh, but Lego, you gotta go out there and have your leaders. You saw what that NHL executive said about Josh Anderson and how he played against the Maple Leafs. You gotta have your rough and tough guys. You have to have the guys in the locker room that inspire the younger guys to play stronger and harder. Not necessarily better and more skilled, but just with a little bit more of an edge. And Anderson provides that, and he can also snipe it down the wing. He's got 20-something goals as his goal production pace this season. Why do you want to trade that guy? Well, essentially, it's because if the Montreal Canadiens want to, get younger, a trade like this helps out, in my opinion. And I'm not really too sure if Josh Anderson is even worth a first in the first place, so the fact that A, a team went out there and offered that, and B, the Canadiens apparently rejected that, it does make me very, very intrigued as to how other players are viewed in the lens of NHL executives and GMs. So you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire idea. If anybody wants to link the audio where this idea comes from, is it a radio hit 690 something, or maybe it was a That's Hockey segment, I'm really not too sure. If anybody actually knows where the source of this LeBrun quote comes from, not just Marco D'Amico's Twitter account, then hey, please let me know in the comments where this exact thing is said, because I would love to get a little bit more context as to how Pierre LeBrun says it, because how somebody says it is almost as important as what they say. So either way, let me know in the comments if that is found in any respect. But just in general, what are your thoughts about the idea of the Montreal Canadiens having the opportunity to trade Josh Anderson away for a first-round pick and not taking it? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.